Welcome to the Aftershock post-game show. We are here after the San Jose Earthquakes 1-1 draw with Nashville SC. We're at PayPal Park. I'm Alex Morgan. I'm here with Robert Jonas. Robert, this was an electric game. It started off quite boring. I think it was the fewest XG I've seen in a soccer game in the first half. No big chances for either team. Cade Cowell rattled the post from a distance, but it didn't pick up until the second half. And then when it picked up, boy, was it entertaining. What are your takeaways here?
Yeah, this was a great 45 minutes of soccer. You know, Nashville came out strong in the second half, got their goal, and that somehow woke up the Earthquakes. And yeah, we saw a lot of effort. I think that's two things. Number one, Luchi did not wait to get subs into the game. So, bring in Nico, bring in Matthew Hoppe, bring in Paul Marie. That really changed the dynamic on the field. Nashville's going to sit back with 1-0 lead on the road. There was no surprise there. So the Earthquakes were finally going to start seeing a little more of the possession than they had to that point. Nashville, I think, had, according to the stats, the possession edge in all but a 5-minute segment of the first half leading to that point. So, they stood back and let the Earthquake kind of bring it at them. And Matthew Hoppe played hero again tonight. So it was a nice result to get the tie. And unfortunately, the flurry of incredible opportunities, if you want to call it that, couldn't get the second one in.
Your meeting is starting.
This is something that the Quakes will hopefully be able to build on.
100%. And I don't think it was the goal that it was very clearly the substitutions that Luchi Gonzalez made, and the fact that he was willing to make them quickly. Right after the goal, he brought on Nico Shakiris, he brought on Matthew Hoppe, he brought on Paul Marie, and those three players changed the game. The verticality they brought, the confidence that they brought, the directness that they brought, completely turned the game on its head. And I'm shocked that they weren't able to get the ball in the back of the net and score a winner here. They had more XG in the space of 30 seconds than I think they've had for the entire month of September. They had multiple glorious chances. Do you feel like they were hard done by with this one, that they deserved it tonight?
It's the numbers will say they do, but you can, if you only play half a game of soccer, you might only get half a result, and that's kind of what happened tonight. It's not as if Nashville was tearing up the place in the first 45 either, but that was time the Quakes didn't have anymore. They did really kind of pour it on, and it looked like a team that probably has, many of them played 3 games in a week, and they looked dead tired by the end of this one. But to sort of give up that much time on the clock and try to, put in a full game effort in 45 minutes, again, that's a gamble. It didn't feel like the Quakes came out trying to get the first goal like they did against Real Salt Lake. They were very strong to open that game. This sort of felt the opposite. Like they were happy that Nashville probably wasn't taking it to them as strong as they could, and happy to get into halftime and still have it be scoreless.
And I don't want to get too caught up in the excitement of that second half, because I think if you look back on the balance here, on the whole of this game, this was a bad result for the Earthquakes. With Portland winning against Colorado tonight, the Earthquakes are now, considerably worse off than they were entering tonight in the playoff game. It looks like they might be sitting in a 9th spot right now, but they're going to need points against Minnesota United. They're going to need a win from these last 3 games in order to make the playoffs. It felt like going into tonight, it was still kind of a sure thing. And now is time to hit panic mode, because a loss at home, another loss at home, they've only won 1 game at home in 4 games since the return of MLS after Leagues Cup. They're in a really bad spot right now, and I think you have to really focus on that first half. And if you're thinking about the big picture, the question is, why did they come out so flat in the first half? What went wrong? Where were the vibes? Where was the urgency? Where was the energy? This is their biggest match of the season so far, and they came out and they looked dead. No one was willing to push the tempo. Their counterattacks were incredibly slow. And they didn't set up to score goals. It felt like a challenge for them even to get the ball into the attacking half and to get anything going forward. I mean, that's just so incredibly disappointing from Luchi Gonzalez at this point in the season. Is it not?
It is. And I'm sure we'll bring it up, and game situations play a significant, kind of need to be considered. But Nico Shakiris, played excellent when he got into this game. he's looked good as a starter as well in these last few weeks when he's had his opportunities. It might be more Nico time is necessary to get the team through these last couple of games, and hopefully, dare we say, into ninth place. The way things are stacking up at the West right now. Fortunately, this was a game against the East, so they're not losing ground to a direct opponent for those playoff spots. We'll probably talk more about the fact that their games remaining are against teams that they are competing with, at least 2 out of 3 with Dallas and Minnesota being significant 6-pointers in the traditional sense of that phrase. But to not come out strong enough in the first half to set the tone is, again, you got to be disappointed.
It just feels like they lack motivation. I think Mark Frazier is right here. I think there has to be some sort of motivation issue, because they came out and they looked flat. They looked nervous. They looked anxious. They did not look like a team that was confident that they can go out and claim their spot, claim their stake in the playoffs. And it's just frustrating, because we know they have the attacking players. We know they have the urgency in the lineup. That's evident from the second half. So the fact that it didn't show up in the first half is a real major issue here for Luchi Gonzalez. Is that right?
Well, and Alex, you said it too, and this is probably on Luchi as well. If you looked at that formation, the way Cade and Espinosa were playing so deep at times, as opposed to being able to play higher up the field where they're a better outlet to get the offense going, the Quakes, they were back in that flat 4 midfield at times, which is not really conducive to getting the attack going. That's got to be a coach's decision. I don't know if you want to call it motivation, but it's certainly a coach's decision to play that way.
I have absolutely no idea what they were doing tactically in the first half, because Robert's absolutely right. They were defending in a 4-4-2 with 2 blocks of 4, and then Jamir Montero and Jeremy Abobasi up top. And the problem was they pinned the wingers, Christian Espinosa and Cade Cowell, so far back that they didn't have anybody going forward when they wanted to break away. We've talked about at length, the Quakes are the best on the counterattack when you have Christian Espinosa posted up top and behind. That's why we liked the 3-5-2 formation that they experimented with a month or 2 ago, is because it put Christian Espinosa in that 9 position so they could find him on the long ball. Tonight, they didn't have anybody going forward on the counterattack in the first half. They had Jamir Montero there, but instead of going forward, all he was looking to do was drop backwards into the hole and hold the ball. And by the time he was able to sort his feet out, the chance was over. So there was absolutely no hope of the Earthquakes counterattacking tonight. And I think Luchi Gonzalez made a really bad decision in setting up the team that defensively in a game where they really needed to go out and set the tempo and win it. And it's also frustrating, bigger picture, because we know he's aware that the 3-5-2 is an option. We know that he's seen the fact that Christian Espinosa looks good when he's further forward. We know that he knows these things and he's willing to experiment. So why not tonight is the question. Why are you going with a tired, formation that has been, kind of dead for the last 2 months? I mean, there's a reason that the Earthquakes have been slowly tailing off the last month and a half, is because this formation that Luchi Gonzalez seems very stuck to and adhered to is no longer working. And it's no longer working with this setup of players and this configuration of players. And they need to look beyond that if they have any hope of making the playoffs and doing anything in the playoffs.
We've seen some of that 3-5-2. We've seen the Quakes mix it up a little bit in recent weeks. And then the results are not, win after win after win. They're getting some experience with it. And this it has to be to the coaching that they decided against Nashville that they needed to be a little more protective. They were willing to give Nashville the ball, which is not, and as I understand it, their primary strength, and just sort of sit back and absorb that pressure. And the confrontational line was way too far back to make any difference in the first half. And they came out in the second half, and even in those first few minutes, it was still early, but it wasn't as if the game suddenly opened up after the halftime. To start the second half, it only really opened up when the game changed, when Nashville got its lead, and then that really triggered both Nashville to adjust and the Quakes to wake up that much more than zero, which they had been up to that point.
So have we had enough polemic yet? Have we focused on the first half enough? Can we move to the second half, or is there more you want to? There is one thing I think we need to bring up about the first half, Robert, because I think it's important to dwell on this first half, because the first half is, I think, the kind of characteristic half that we've seen from the last few months of this Earthquakes team. I think it's the fact that you started Jonathan Mensah back in the starting lineup, because Luchi has now been going back and forth between Tanner Beeson and Jonathan Mensah for the last few games. A part of it is due to injury and suspension. It's not all tactical choice, but tonight it felt like a tactical choice, given that Tanner Beeson was available on the bench, and we know he's been fit for a decent while now. So it seemed like a tactical choice to start Jonathan Mensah in there, and then Jonathan Mensah lets Berkey ghost in behind him and scored the goal. Was that a mistake to put Jonathan Mensah back in the starting lineup?
I think with his veteran experience and the fact that he's well rested because he hasn't been playing is, I think, part of why you saw him tonight and again in a 3-game week. I would also say, with respect to the starting 11 decisions, that I think we need to be questioning a bit more about whether Cade Cowell is a starter. Now, he had the one highlight of the first half, just a great shot. That's the kind of cutback you want to see Cade Cowell take advantage of and rattle it off the post. If that had been a half foot lower, it's a 1-0 win, and it's a goal of the week candidate, or 1-0 lead at least, and a goal of the week candidate. But other than that, Cade didn't have a lot to do. Again, starting so deep in the Quakes half, it just didn't really open up for him to have an effect on the team. Matthew Hoppe, again, I know game states are different, but he looked fantastic tonight. So maybe Hoppe should be getting that start. I don't know if it's Beeson over Mensah, but that may be the one position on the field I'm maybe more concerned about. And I'm getting more and more kind of trusting of Nico Shakiris to make a difference in a game. We know he looks like he can be trusted at this point. He's a great sub, and if he needs to start, he can start, but maybe he should be starting as opposed to needs to be.
All right, I'm comfortable turning to the second half now, Robert,
yes.
Only because the Earthquakes do have 3 games left this season, a really crucial match against their Western Conference Minnesota, and then 2 more games. And if they get a win, they get 3 or 4 points, they're more than likely in the playoffs at this point. And so I think a big focus for these next 3 games should be, what players do you put on the field to give this team energy and momentum to claim those points? And I think it's so obviously clear that at this point it is Nico Shakiris and Matthew Hoppe. Matthew Hoppe is now San Jose's top scorer in the month of September. His goals per minute ratio is incredible. And I wish Jamin Moore were here on the show tonight so I could take some credit, because I think there have been a lot of Matthew Hoppe haters in and around this Aftershock show for the last month and a half that doubted whether he was a guy who could come in and make a difference. And I think he's proved himself now. 2 goals in the last 2 games. He scores the goal against Portland, scores a really crucial goal tonight. I think that Matthew Hoppe is the real deal. And the thing that I appreciate about him is the energy that he brought. Maybe there's not a ton of tactical versatility, but whenever he got on the ball, he was driving the ball forward. He was looking for passes. He was looking to shoot. And I think that was incredibly important in the second half. That energy was the difference between the first half and the second half for the Earthquakes. And it was a masterclass for Matthew Hoppe tonight. He was dropping back deep, winning the ball, carrying it upfield, finding spots in the box, creating chances. This was everything we hoped for and more from Matthew Hoppe. This is truly a summer signing that is making a difference at this stage in the season. And I think, do I get any credit for standing by Matthew Hoppe in this transfer?
Not that I was on Jamin's side here, but I definitely think this was a very inspired pickup. It's a low risk pickup to bring in a forward like that, and someone who wants to make a difference. I mean, it looked tonight like Hoppe was going to carry this team to a victory. He almost did, and he really almost did. He had a great pass to Miro that was blocked. He had the follow up on that defender cleared in such a manner, and he was just so active in the box, and we saw it in the Portland game too. He wanted to be active and he was looking to get the ball, and the Quakes were not able to find him as often as I think Matthew would have liked to have been found. But a goal in that game, a goal in this game, you said it at the start of the game, in the Cade versus Hoppe debate, if you will. If you're the one who scores the goal, you should be in the game, and I think that's where Luchi has to look at things moving forward with this game against Minnesota and another important game against Dallas. Both of those games, to your point, are the 6-pointers, are the 2 teams that maybe will pip this Quakes from a playoff spot, and the Quakes have it in their hands to be able to make the results in their favor. They got to get the points, but at least they have that opportunity.
Here's the thing, Robert. If you have Matthew Hoppe starting on the left wing I think you need Paul Marie starting at left back with him, because I loved the way that they played together tonight. They both bring so much energy, so much drive. They are dangerous together on the left wing. They're making dangerous, confusing runs. They're both willing to cut to the outside and whip a ball in. They're both willing to step into the middle and drive into the box. Paul Marie had that gorgeous through ball for Matthew Hoppe that Hoppe managed to get past the goalkeeper, and that was so tantalizing, just trickling past the face of the goal onto the post. They have a good connection on the left wing, and together I think they bring a lot of energy to this team. So I think if you start Matthew Hoppe, you also have to start Paul Marie at left back, because I'm going to be honest, we haven't seen a lot of energy coming from the fullback positions. We know that Trauco and Carlos Acapo are decent on the ball and can cycle the ball and can step into the midfield and have a shot now and then. But they didn't do that tonight. They haven't been doing that for the last few games because the Quakes haven't been getting the ball forward enough.
Right.
If you want somebody to get the ball forward, you put on Paul Marie. They need Paul Marie to do that because he's a guy who will get his head up and drive the ball forward. So I liked that combination between Hoppe and Marie on the left, and I think that needs to be the starting combination against Minnesota. Do you agree?
I think Luchi's got some big questions to answer with respect to that, and just the idea that, okay, the domino effect, if you start those two, then you've at least got Rodriguez back there. But if you start Beeson, you're probably going to flip Beeson into that place. Is Beeson able to cover for two players that are definitely attack minded and are going to want to get forward? So I don't think it's as easy as starting those two without actually kind of thinking about the entirety of the spine of what the Quakes are going to put out there. I like the way they play. I really do. And if you're not getting enough out of Trauco and Cade, whether it be their play or the tactics that they're being asked to perform, then you've got those two on the bench. Having said that, if the opportunity is there to play them because somebody's just not, picking it up enough in training or otherwise, yeah, I feel comfortable that those two can be productive from the opening whistle.
Look, I think it's too late to second guess yourself or to overthink it. I think if you're Luchi Gonzalez, you got to play the hot hand right now. You have to play the guys that are showing motivation, that are showing they want it, that are showing they're going to be the ones to put this team on their backs and carry them to the playoffs. And right now, that is Paul Marie and Matthew Hoppe and Nico Shakiris in the midfield.
And I think Luchi has the advantage now that he doesn't have to manage 3 games in a week. He can, it's back to a regular cadence of a full week of training leading up to a weekend game. So as players perform in training, as he sees that, those interactions as the team prepares, he can make those decisions and not feel like he's having to look too far ahead. You do have to look ahead when you're making it, when you're trying to play that many games in such a few number of days. You can't just assume you're going to be able to play the same starting 11 every time.
Yeah, and I want to focus a little bit on Nico Shakiris here, Robert, because I think he's maybe a bigger question mark in my head as to whether he starts, because we know at the beginning of the season, he got injured. Throughout the summer, he really struggled to reestablish himself. He played a couple games. I still think back to the really bad loss against Houston Dynamo where he struggled defensively. He wasn't able to track back and cover it up. And we're going to
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight's post-game press conference following our 1-1 draw with Nashville SC. Today, we have midfielder and captain Jackson Ewell, and we will start with a question from Alex Morgan.
Hi, Jackson. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's good to speak to you. Felt like two very different halves in this one. The first half, you guys weren't able to create many chances, didn't have a ton of energy going forward. In the second half, after the goal, there's so much momentum, guys piling forward, and it felt like you were unlucky not to score 2 goals there. Are you concerned about the way that this team played in the first half and the lack of urgency and the lack of ideas going forward? Why do you think that there was such a huge contrast there?
I think first, I think Nashville is a really good team. They have really good players. They're calm with the ball. I think they kind of had a lot of possession, and it was hard for us to get pressure and win the ball in the first half. But I think in our block, in our shape, we didn't really give up a lot of chances. I think the first half was really disciplined by us. I don't it was good to go in 0-0. Obviously we weren't playing our best. We weren't keeping the ball. We were winning the ball and then kind of turning it over again. But I think the second half, we kind of turned around. I think the guys who came in, gave us a bit of a spark. We were able to go forward a little bit more, connect better passes, better combinations in around the box, and that you saw that with the chances. And I think it's to build on that, to keep pushing the game, have a little more urgency. We obviously wanted to start that way the whole game, but it's something to build on to go to Minnesota with.
Next, we'll go to Titus Wilkerson.
Hey, Jackson, thanks for your time. Obviously, kind of speaking on that, building off tonight, you guys showed offensively, obviously, that you can be very dangerous, here in that second half. You had tons of chances, just couldn't quite finish. How much of that offensive momentum here tonight are going to try to carry over into Minnesota to try to get a quick goal and get the victory on Saturday?
I think, with the few games that we have left, we know where we are on the table, and we know that we need to, maximize the points and the capabilities. And, we have two road games coming up, and, we're going to have to find a way to win. And, we want to take the offensive, good points and keep highlighting those and keep utilizing that. Like I said, I think the subs who came in did a really good job. We're going to need them again. We need the whole team, the whole roster to come and give us energy, and build on that, and keep forming relationships with some of the guys who came in the summertime, and keep utilizing their strengths and go to Minnesota and get the 3 points.
Next, we'll go to Jamin Moore.
Unmuted.
Hey, Jackson. It's been really interesting when you've had the opportunity to kind of drop in and play some 6 and be able to get attackers in front of you. I think, we've all really enjoyed seeing you play at the 8, and we know Carlos Perez was a key part of the team, but the team does feel like it has more offensive spark, and that was definitely shown in the second half tonight. Like, what qualities do you think Nico's bringing right now to the attack that does really kind of push teams when he comes on in the second half like he has? Thanks.
Muted.
I think Nico's starting to find his rhythm and find his groove. He's come in the last couple of games and done really well. He's able to, I think, find good spaces. His recognition of, where to be is really impressive for someone young. His ability to turn and kind of drive with the ball and, make passes, in tight areas, I think is one of his really good qualities. And that's something, I think we need as a team, and, to break down some teams. And, I think with his ability to kind of link up with Jeremy and Jamiro when Hoppe was in, with Christian, with Carlos, I think is really impressive. So, just gives us an opportunity to attack and push at the end of the game. And you saw it today, and we're going to keep needing him for the rest of the year.
Next, we'll go to Ivan Ornelius.
Good evening, Jackson. Next game is on the road to Minnesota, which presents a big challenge for the whole team, but it's also a unique opportunity for you growing up in Bloomington, Minnesota, and starting your career there. So tell us a little bit about all the different layers that this game presents itself for you.
It's always a special one. I have a lot of family and friends, and really good ties and connections to the state, and I'm really happy for the team and the transition that they've done in recent years, and the progress that they've made. And it's a really, really great sports environment, sports culture that the whole state has. But for me, it's we're going there to win. We need the 3 points, and going there with the mentality to beat them. And when it comes game time, it definitely won't be a friendly match for me.
And we'll close with the final question from Robert Jonas.
Thanks. Jackson, we've talked quite often about the role you play as team captain, and your ability to talk to players, to talk to your teammates about their responsibilities and how everyone can work together. You've got 3 games in this last week, a lot of evidence, a lot of time on the field with the guys. what are the conversations you want to have with individual players, with the team as a whole, to take those experiences, especially the successes of players like, Matthew Hoppe and Nico at times, seeing how Hoppe and Paul Murray play together, and inspire this group with these 3 games coming up. You've got Minnesota and Dallas, 2 teams that are, you're fighting for those last couple of playoff spots. But what do you feel you can do with this group to get them ready?
Yeah, for us and for the team, we always talk about, taking it day by day, moment by moment. I think it's building those connections with the guys, and making sure everyone is aligned in the same goal seeking mindset. I think we have an objective that we set out at the beginning of the year. We've had new guys come in, and obviously we've had setbacks and difficult moments throughout the year, but we've also had really good moments. So it's about highlighting the good things, learning from the bad things, staying true to our values and what we do really well. So it's simple conversations, in the trainings and in the locker rooms, keeping the energy high, keeping the motivation and the focus on just the next game and the next training session, and what we can do to improve and to grab the 3 points. So I'm excited for the games. I think we have a really good chance and a really good group, and we're going to have to count on everyone to succeed.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We will be back momentarily with head coach Luchi Gonzalez.
Thank you, guys.
And there you have it from Jackson Ewell. Robert, I have some thoughts about this press conference because I'm still stuck on the comment that Jackson made at the beginning of the press conference about the first half. And he said that he was happy with and suggested that they did a good job to get into the halftime break without allowing a goal, that he felt confident about the way that their low block was playing. And that comment just really, really rubbed me the wrong way, because this is a home game against Nashville with 4 games left in the season, and you really need a victory to claim those points and to book your spot in the playoffs. And you're happy with the fact that you go into halftime 0-0, having done nothing going forward. I just think, to me, that suggests that they were approaching this first half with the completely wrong mentality and attitude, because they needed to go into this game and claim the 3 points. And I don't care how successful their low block is if they can't get the ball off the pitch and they can't move the ball forward. I think it's actually a failure of their tactics, a failure of their defensive setup if they're not getting high value turnovers and transitions and putting the ball forward. So I just think that shows to me that Luchi Gonzalez is playing way too conservatively and is focusing on the wrong things at this point. That entire section of the press conference really, really, freaked me out.
We just saw Arturo's quote up there. That's exactly what I wrote here from Jackson in that statement, was the idea that he said we were disciplined. And that just tells me that, okay, the players felt they played to how they were asked to play in that first half. Mm-hmm. And that really, that's the question Luchi will need to answer. If that's the strategy going in against an Eastern Conference opponent, in which, again, you're at home and you need 3 points to give yourself that much more of a cushion as these games wind down, to know that the actual game plan was to be passive and disciplined as opposed to active and attacking is disappointing. Now, to make it a 45-minute game is a strategy. Maybe that was what Luchi was thinking. But you run the risk that you give Nashville that much possession and maybe they pip a goal. And certainly they got a great goal to start the second half. And now things get a bit thrown out the window. You have to play that attacking soccer that looked great at times. We saw at the beginning of the game against Real Salt Lake, but we had to wait until the end to see it tonight. And that is, you're right, an issue of tactics, not an issue of players.
I think that was a strategy, and I think it's just a bad strategy. And I think Luchi Gonzalez dropped the ball on this one. That was my takeaway from the press conference, is not that the Earthquakes lacked the kind of the urgency or motivation from the players, but that Luchi Gonzalez actively set them up conservatively to play disciplined, to play not to lose against Nashville, and that was a really poor decision.
It didn't work. They got the point, but yeah, 3 points was absolutely and should have been the goal. I don't think Jackson shied away from the fact that he was impressed with their performances in the second half. We were asked about some specific players, the energy of the subs coming in. All of that was met with some very positive feedback from Jackson. Understandably, they looked good when they were a little bit unleashed, if you will. The team did respond and looked very strong. I asked Jackson the question about his role as team captain because I do really feel that it's not just the coaching staff that's going to be rallying players at this point with a month to go. It's the veterans. It's a player like Jackson who understands the stakes, who needs to be talking to individuals and really challenging folks to step up and be accountable and presentable and get these points.
At least Matias Almeida understood that the Quakes needed to be the protagonists and that they wanted to be the guys, the team pushing the tempo and pushing the envelope. And I don't get the choice to sit back and be passive in a game like this. I really don't get it. And to me, it just signals like some weakness that there's some insecurity about this team's ability to claim the match, to be confident on the ball, to push forward, to play attacking, to press high. It suggests to me that Luchi Gonzalez doesn't think that they can do that and is doubting the capacity of this team to stake their claim at home, as if they were expecting Nashville to come in and be widely superior, and they needed to adjust their game plan to defend against Mukhtar and all of Nashville's attackers. I just think that was a weak mentality and signaled weakness going into this game.
It was not the best opening gambit for this chess match against a team, Nashville, that yes is good, but not at the top of the Eastern Conference. But they're coming in hungry too. They want to get as many points as they can, and they would have loved to walk away with 3 points tonight. It would have been a huge boost to their playoff position. So they knew Nashville was going to come in and be a tough opponent. I do think you're right. They may have respected them too much in a situation where the Quakes needed to be the team that walked out tonight heads high because they put on a 90-minute performance.
All right, and so let's go back to Nico Shakiris, because Nico Shakiris, Matthew Hoppe, and Paul Maria, cannot stress enough, did bring that energy, bring that urgency. In the second half, they were willing to go for it and to throw everything they had going forward. And I do want to give Luchi Gonzalez credit for recognizing that and being willing to make the early substitutions. And it was too late, but at least he finally did. And I think the Quakes were probably unlucky not to walk away with the win. Now to focus on Nico, he's a guy who defensively hasn't been up to snuff for most of this season, but the last 3 games, really solid performance, his best performance of the season against Real Salt Lake, good substitute performances recently. Tonight, again, he comes on, gets in the midfield, and he is driving the tempo. He is pushing the ball forward. As Jamin asked in the press conference, he's allowing Jackson Ewell to step back and play a deeper 6 role and control more of the ball. And he is the one who's driving it forward and shuttling it and giving the Quakes verticality and directness that they didn't have elsewhere. Is it time to give Nico Shakiris the reins? After the game against Portland, I was skeptical. After the game against Portland, what I said was that you still trust Jamir Montero because Jamir Montero is a known quantity because he was defensively stronger. And now I actually don't know if I can stick with that opinion. Now I think that I don't care how the Quakes play in the low block if they're not actually creating chances going forward. And Nico Shakiris might not be the guy to play in the low block, but he's definitely the guy to create chances going forward.
I spoke earlier about that domino effect of decisions. I thought Miro played a really good game tonight. He was playing more or less as a second forward. The first half didn't really allow him to shine. But in the very same way that when Jackson played back and Nico played forward, Miro was always up top. He was a second forward, creating chances, being very dangerous in the box. Could have had the game-winning goal on Matt Hoppe's pass right to his feet. Incredible save to keep it 1-1 at that point. I don't think the team suffers when any of them are on.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight's postgame press conference. We have head coach Luchi Gonzalez. We will start with questions in Spanish, starting with Paula Mari.
Muy buenas noches. En este juego sobresalió el trabajo colectivo y el manejo de la intensidad, sobre todo en la segunda parte. ¿Qué opina del desempeño del equipo? También, ¿Qué piensas del protagonismo de Matthew en este encuentro con la presión de anotar goles que lo logró? Muchas gracias y buenas noches.
Sí, ¿qué tal, Paola? Mira, la verdad, el partido está un poco parejo, primer tiempo. Este es un buen equipo, defienden bien y te atacan con mucha verticalidad. Dos delanteros, un jugador como Mukhtar, como enganche, como un tercer ataque, un tercer jugador que ataca. Y mira, están fuertes defensivamente, pero no hablamos en la mitad de que tenemos que tener más control de la pelota, más secuencias de pases. Estamos defensivamente muy bien, ponemos presión, ganamos la pelota y la regalamos muy fácil. Y hablamos desde la mitad. Pensé que el segundo tiempo empezamos bien, pero en una jugada, como un equipo como Nashville, la pelota a la espalda y un cruce es gol, crédito a ellos, pero muy buena respuesta, muy buena energía, como dijiste, protagonismo los últimos 30 minutos para empujar el empate. Para mí, mala suerte no meter el segundo gol, pero no pasó. Y como mencionaste, Matthew Hoppe entró bien. El jugador ahora tiene 2 goles para nosotros y tiene versatilidad, tiene mucho anticipación, muchos movimientos en el área, combinaciones en cara, y está ayudando al equipo a competir. Y orgulloso de él y orgulloso de los chicos que entraron en el juego también para empujar en el ataque.
We will now go to questions in English and start with Jamin Moore.
Unmuted.
Hey, Luchi. Last home game, you guys came out in the first 25 minutes, really, pushed the game forward and got a couple goals, felt very aggressive. Tonight felt completely the opposite in the first half, 0.07 XG in the first half, just a couple shots. Kate obviously hit the crossbar there. A lot of energy off the bench in the second half from players like Matthew Hoppe and Paul Marie and Nico Shakiris. At this point, given that you really need to get 3 points, probably ahead of decision day in order to secure playoffs, are you looking at giving those players a bit more time, maybe a couple more starts to be able to bring that energy on a bit earlier in the game? Thanks.
Muted.
Yeah, look, the starting lineup today is the same lineup that has won multiple games at home with energy, and that's all. That's definitely the reference. We talked about how Salt Lake the first half was one of our best, and why, right? In terms of pushing the game forward, getting pressure on the ball, winning the ball, opposition's half, and showing quality, right? Breaking lines and our build up and attacking the box. I actually thought we defended well first half in terms of our mid block to get pressure on the ball. What happens is when you win the ball 6-7 times in their half or near the midfield and you give it right back, that cycle is tiring. And then we didn't get as much pressure on the ball as we would like. And then that it creates some frustration. So I agree. Like, no, we didn't have that. We didn't have that quality on the ball first half that allowed us to reward ourselves or control the game better or impose more when we got the ball back. So, we talked about how we could fix it at half. I thought we actually started the half with some better passing sequences, but then, conceding early was not ideal. At that point, yeah, we just get some other guys on the field that we think can push the game, that have courage and that can give us some of those elements that we saw there at the end. So, there's competition. Again, the lineup we started with is a lineup that has got a lot of results this year, but it's great to see guys like Paul, Impose, Nico, and Hoppe, who's a new player. I was asked in Spanish about the positive impact he's made. He's got versatility. He can play wide. He can play inside. He can play in the last line. Got combinations. He drives at the back line, gets in the box. Almost scores another rebound tonight. Right, like has a lot of anticipation and double movements in his game, and I think that's great, and that's going to continue to help us. But yeah, I look. We have an opportunity. Somehow the results were okay. We got a point. Disappointed we didn't get 3, but we're still in a position to control our destiny and as much as possible. And you're right. We gotta to find a way to get more points on the road now against Minnesota. I know their home form is different than their away, but they're a very good team and they have very good players. So we have to be ready to show our best. We put ourselves in a position to do this, and now home or away, it's up to us to get it done with no regrets. And we got to rest now and build momentum and belief to try to do it better. We started amazing. This game we ended amazing. Can we keep trying to focus and get better every day to have a more consistent performance from the beginning to the end?
Next, we'll go to Titus Wilkerson.
Hi, Luchi. Thank you for your time. Obviously, there's a lot of impressive offensive performances out there tonight, especially off the bench. But I felt like tonight, especially Montero was somebody to really highlight. Felt like he was drawing fouls, sparking a lot of offense. Obviously, nearly had a goal at the header in the box. Just what are your thoughts on his performance and how important he'll be here later on in the season in these last couple games?
No, Mito's, like you said, he's a spark. That's for sure. He found good moments of getting the ball between the lines. He can combine, got his shot. I know he would want that shot back there by the penalty spot. The one where it puts it on frame and then Hoppe gets the rebound. But he's a positive player for us. We value him. That's why he's gotten opportunities to play. He also works really hard defensively, getting pressure on the ball. I know he wants to reward himself with the intensity and the spark by getting assists and goals. So he's going to keep fighting for that, and hopefully that can turn into stats here at the end of the season for him and the team.
Next, Alex Morgan.
Hey, Luchi. Do you think that the strategy going into the first half was too conservative and too respectful of Nashville? Because I hear what you're saying about the fact that the team, defensively was in control and the low block prevented Nashville from getting chances. But it felt like this being, the penultimate home game of the season, if you win, you can get, more likely into the playoffs and get a strong grasp on a playoff spot, that it was an opportunity to seize the game, to be more of the protagonist and press higher and make a statement here. And, you saw in the second half, when you're willing to kind of let the reins loose a little bit and push more energy going forward, just how dangerous the team can be. Do you regret not giving the team that opportunity or having that be the intention in the first half?
Yeah, I think there's value in your observation. It's always easy to make that observation after a game, because that's the way it played out. But I think there's definite value in that, because for me, like the team that starts has an attacking mid, has a center forward, has wingers, true wingers. It has a playmaking 8-6 like a Jackson, and it has a ball disrupting holding mid in a Gresso, and then it has Miguel, who has 3 goals in the season, and then it has a Capo who flies forward. So it's like, we want to score. Of course, we want to attack. We're at home. So, but it's about doing it with balance, and against a very good defensive team, vertical team in transition, like Nashville, they can kill you in 2 passes, 3 passes, right? So it was trying to balance it, and I actually thought we had a good defensive organization, building pressure. We won the ball. Go look at how many times we won the ball in their half or in midfield, but we didn't value it enough, and we didn't create attacks. We didn't have passing sequences. So that's the part where I'm disappointed that we didn't execute. But yeah, look, we put in some other kind of profiles that did push the game, because we got nothing to lose. We got to push the game. 2-0, same as 1-0 in this situation. So proud of that group to come in and make a really positive impact. But it's something to definitely reflect on, and learning about the group as we keep going. And we are disappointed we didn't take advantage of the full 3 points. I thought we were unlucky not to get them at the end, and that's part of our game. But here we go. We got to accept what it is, and as a coach, I will definitely reflect on that. And home or away, how can we still build pressure but then generate attacks and be efficient with them? I think you make a valid point, Alex.
We'll close with a final question from Robert Jonas.
Thanks, Luchi. And that was I appreciate you answering Alex's question that way. Also, Jamin's question, I think, is pretty important in context here as well. You know, the idea of putting together the two halves of Salt Lake and the second half tonight, you know, that's a pretty frenetic game you would be playing for 90 minutes. And I'm not sure any player would be able to play at full intensity for the whole time. You've got these three games though, and there's everything to leave out there to make this to make it into the playoffs. In terms of who you're going to be looking at in training over this next week, as far as, you know, the games have informed you to this point and what you've learned, but in also looking at the hot hand and the guys that are really performing now, how much is that going to be influencing what we see step on the field in Minnesota, as well as you know, how you as you look at the way you're setting up training in the next week?
Yeah, you know, training is so important to us. Like, it's our opportunity to prepare, build a plan towards the next game, and then try to execute it, and then make a better plan as the game goes on, like we had to tonight. So, but at the end of the day, you know, yeah, training and competition and training is really important. We're going to get rest, and then we're going to compete. So the training will show us where guys are during the week, but we will 100% will know that we've got these last few games to give us good references in our decision making. You know, there's some good competitive spots at fullback, in the midfield, on the wing, and so, like, yeah, so we're definitely going to consider that, and like every team is. And you know, guys coming back for national team duty, that's always that moment where you reintegrate those guys, and what is their fitness like? What was their load with the national team? How can we get them onboarded with us as quick as possible and integrated as quick as possible? So I think we're past that now. Now we've got everybody on the same page, same schedule. And yeah, we want to approach the next game by putting the best team that can get the job done from the beginning until the end. Yeah, and give us a little bit more consistency and completeness. So I'm looking forward to continuing to find that balance and get that done.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes tonight's post-game press conference.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
All right, Robert. I think we got to jump back in, Robert, because I have thoughts about this press conference, Robert. I hope you have thoughts as well.
I've written a few down.
We're going to get to some other topics of discussion tonight. I want to return to the conversation about Nico Shakira starting. I want to eventually, towards the end of the conversation, talk about John Fisher's comments about the team in midweek. So I'm going to put a pin in that so that everyone will stick around for those conversations. But my impression from that press conference was very poor. I did not like the way that he handled that press conference. I felt like the takeaways from tonight were very clear and obvious, and that Luchi Gonzalez was waffling a little bit, and he was playing it very political and trying to say a little bit of everything without really saying anything meaningful. When the meaningful takeaways from that game are that the Earthquakes played phenomenally in the second half, and they played incredibly insipid, boring soccer in the first half. And for the remaining 3 games of the season, they need to find a way to recreate that second half and avoid the first half. And I do not like the takeaway that he had about the first half. Just like Jackson Ewell, he seemed to go into halftime thinking, this is great. We haven't allowed a goal. We're doing our job well. And I just could not be on more of a different page than that. I went into the first half wanting to go to sleep and thinking that if the Earthquakes play like this for the rest of this season, I'm going to wash my hands of this season and forget about any hopes of making the playoffs or any hopes of doing anything in the playoffs. If that is the kind of performance that they're happy with, then I don't want to see a game where they're not happy, because they need to put in more than that. They need to be more willing to attack. It is not just the fact that they didn't have any ideas on the ball, like he seemed to suggest. It was the fact that they weren't putting themselves in the position to create turnovers. Creating turnovers high up the field was not actually, the game plan. That was not something that they were prioritizing, and that they weren't getting the guys in space to counterattack quickly. They didn't set up the team in order to do that. So it's not just a like tossing up your hands, being like, well, they didn't have ideas tonight. They didn't have ideas because he didn't put them in the position to do anything attacking with any muster at all.
And while he may not have said it directly, I think in the sense that he really did take your question, break it down with some thoughtful answers. I think he agrees with you. I think he really does, that he recognized that the team was flat and that is a tactical, mishap in terms of this game. He went from the previous question talking about a point being okay to basically changing his tune by the time you and I were asking questions. It didn't sound like a point was okay anymore, and there was an understanding that this was a lost opportunity. I do hope that there's a little bit of a fire under Luchi in terms of he needs to recognize too that these three, it's not just players underperforming, but the coaching has to put players in positions to succeed as much as the players need to take their chances.
And I hear the comments in the chat. I want to give Luchi credit, like our Arturo and Kent here are saying, for acknowledging that criticism and breaking it down. I just don't know why it takes me and you making that criticism for him to see that is what I expected him to come into the press conference saying. It shouldn't take us to raise that point, to levy that criticism. He should be making that criticism of his own team and of his own choices. And he should be recognizing, hey, wait a minute, this is a bad half of soccer and we need to do better. And I'm going to promise to the fans that we're going to do better, because that's not what I want the team playing like. I don't know why we are that have to be the ones telling him this is not how the team should be playing. That seems like a backwards logic there.
And this is not to defend Luchi here at all, but that's not him. And I don't think we're going to hear that from him directly. I agree. It would be nice to kind of hear that message. I do feel a little more hopeful that, he's not as happy with this result as I think he started the press conference with in a much more polite way, to, recognizing, like we recognize that, you can't just wish for urgency. You have to plan for urgency. You can't just wish for a good first half like at RSL and wish for a good second half like you did tonight. You have to have a game plan, and you have to have the right players on the field to make that happen. And that's going to be a big decision he's going to have to make over these next couple of games. This is make or break, and he knows it.
It's not the time for niceties anymore. It's not the time for niceties. It's not the time for politics. It's not the time for playing conservative, and it's not the time for waffling. I feel like now is the time in order to be bold and to be decisive and to recognize that this team needs a kick in the pants and needs some urgency to get to the playoffs, because I've seen too many Earthquakes teams over the last 9 years limp out of the playoffs at the last minute. Even when they've limped into the playoffs, they'll get slaughtered in the first round because they're tired and they're uninspired and they don't know what they're doing. And this team has the capacity to be better than that. We saw that in the second half. They have the capacity to play against a really solid team like Nashville and win and put them on the back foot. And they need to go into the game with that expectation and with that mentality. I think it would be an incredibly disappointing end to the season if they didn't at least make that effort, if they weren't willing to bet on this team. Because tonight it felt like they weren't willing to bet on these players and on this team. And I mean, that's just really sad at this point of the season.
That first half felt like the Quakes were playing for 9th place instead of 7th place. Mm-hmm. And as we know, 9th place doesn't get you a home playoff game unless you're able to win that play-in game. If you can finish top 7, at least you're guaranteed to have that first best of 3 round and reward these home fans for we're over a decade since we've had a home playoff game in San Jose. You're right. There should be an urgency in everyone's mind, who's getting a paycheck from the Earthquakes right now.
I'm sorry, limping into 9th, losing the play-in game and never getting a home playoff at PayPal Park is not a win for me. That is still a failure for me. The expectation needs to be that this team is getting a home playoff game at PayPal Park for the first time in 9-10 years, for the first time ever. I mean, I don't know how that is not just the expectation and the rallying cry for this team. And that's why I'm upset at this point, because I think everyone in the Earthquakes community has waited so long for that. For there to be any touchiness about that at this point, I think is just a little bit out of touch with where the fans are at. And I think that Luchi Gonzalez should recognize that feeling that I think is in in the fan base.
I needed to be more direct in my question, but Alex, to the follow-up I gave with regards to player decisions and what this team can do in this next week, it was really based on, hearing him mention that this starting 11 has gotten results at home. Well, I mean, the team has got a lot of great results at home months ago.
Not recently.
It's not been a consistent pattern since the post Leagues Cup that you could come out to PayPal Park and expect the Earthquakes, in your words, to be the protagonist, Almeida's words from before, and really put on a show, and that wasn't the Earthquakes that we saw this starting lineup do today, in a way that maybe they were doing better back in April, back in the May time period. I do think Luchi Gonzalez took a hard look at the guys and make a decision on 11 players that want to win, that want to start the opening whistle, like we saw some of the guys tonight do. And if they want to play themselves into the ground and you bring other guys in the subs in the 70th minute, do it, because you can't wait. There's nothing to wait for anymore.
And to respond to Kent's comment here, those are not high standards. Those are standards. It is not, that is the bare minimum expectation in Major League Soccer, is to make the playoffs in a Western Conference where 9 of 12 teams get to 9 of 14, I guess at this point, get to make the playoffs, and 7 of them get directly in the playoffs. That's the bare minimum that each team should be striving for, and that's the expectation against which we're going to hold them to.
Yeah.
And I do want to turn to briefly the conversation we were having about Nico Shakiris, because Jamin Moore, while he is not on the show tonight, he is backstage, and he has been feeding Robert and I little tidbits throughout the show. And one of the tidbits that he fed us that I want to highlight is a potential solution to the midfield problem. Because we've been thinking there's a dichotomy here. There's a mutually exclusive choice between Jamiro Montero and Nico Shakiris at the number 10 position. Jamin is posing, what if you play Nico Shakiris at the 10, Jamiro Montero at the 8, and Jackson Ewell at the 6? And I like that. I am taking to that idea. I appreciate Jamin for feeding us that idea and making us look smart, because I think that allows you to get the best out of Nico Shakiris, and it allows you to get the best out of Jamiro Montero. I have never thought that Jamiro Montero is a bad player. He clearly has great skills on the ball. He has an eye for a pass. He's good at getting into weird pockets of space. But he's not a number 10. He's not doing the job of a number 10 that Luchi's system demands. He's not going to beat a player and make a pass. He doesn't have shooting ability from outside the box. He's not going to directly shuttle the ball forward. I think that system, that configuration works well because it allows him to play slightly deeper as an 8, where he is more natural. He is a natural 8. And then you have Nico Shakiris doing the job of a 10. Because I genuinely think that if you want the defensive cover of Jamiro Montero, you can get that from having him in the 8, and then you have all of Nico's talents at the 10. Is there any issue with that configuration? Do you think that it's too offensive? Do you think that leaving out Carlos Guerrero is a bad idea?
So Carlos Guerrero was going to be the first 2 words out of my mouth as soon as you started that, because that is a huge decision to make. I don't think it's necessarily the wrong decision. You're kind of flipping the script of tonight's game with keeping Carlos on the bench as a sub you can bring in, assuming you've got the lead or you're keeping the game tight, as opposed to playing defensive from the opening whistle and absorbing a lot of pressure and hoping you can keep the game close or keep the game scoreless. It would be a very bold decision to leave Carlos on the bench, not just because he's a DP and can play at that quality. I don't think we've seen the best Carlos Guerrero in recent weeks like we saw to open the season. And maybe that would be the message that the coach could make. I'm going to play the hot hands. That's kind of the point of my question. And Carlos is going to be the first off the bench when we need a guy to break things up. Judson was that player and can be that player. Maybe Carlos should be the player for a few games here.
So Jamin Moore is feeding us more stats. This is just the Jamin Moore show now. He says that the data will show, I'm pretty sure that the data will show that the games Jackson plays as a lone 6 have more XG and goals than games where Jackson Ewell is playing at the 8. So Jackson Ewell playing at the 6 is also a positive. And I want Luchi Gonzalez to make this decision. I think it'll make them better. I also think it's a bold choice that could catalyze this team, because we've seen this system as it is has reached terminal velocity. It's not going anywhere. He needs to make a change to do something. This is the change that makes sense from every angle. and that would signal to me he's betting on this team.
Yeah.
He thinks that this team has another gear in them that they can go to. So I think he absolutely needs to make this change. That's where I want to leave this tactical discussion before we head into next weekend's game against Minnesota. The other discussion that we need to have here, Robert, and I'm glad we're fired up to talk about this because I think that this is a conversation that deserves a lot of scrutiny, is the conversation about John Fisher and the comments that John Fisher made over the week, over the course of the week. There was an article that came out in ESPN about the Oakland A's moving to Las Vegas and about that whole debacle and that situation. And in that article, buried way down at the bottom of the article, John Fisher made some comments about the San Jose Earthquakes and the PayPal Park Stadium deal and his thoughts about that, which I don't think were taken kindly within the Earthquakes community. I'll read out the comments now, just so we can all be working with the same evidence here. The context was that the interviewer, Tim Keown, was asking about the PayPal Park deal because that was a situation in which the Earthquakes built a stadium, that Fisher built a stadium, with the expectation that would give the organization the kind of foundation it needed to go forward and succeed. And Tim Keown, we believe, was asking, okay, well, the Earthquakes haven't then, gone on to succeed in the playoffs. Why should this Oakland A's move help the organization at all if it hasn't helped with the Earthquakes? And so the quote here that Fisher had was that the comparison between the Oakland A's and the Earthquakes is "quote unquote" apples to oranges, Fisher says. And Dave Kaval, the president who helped spearhead that stadium move, also said that he was sidestepping the question. He didn't directly address the question. And then the bit here, it's not a direct quote, but the paraphrase that really got me riled up was, according to Fisher, the 8-year-old PayPal Stadium in San Jose is already outdated compared to newer MLS stadiums. He mentions LAFC, St. Louis, and Austin, and lacks the capacity to premium seating that drives the kind of revenue needed to compete for championships. Robert, Jonas, you were probably the first one to jump on this. I want to turn it over to you before I throw my hat in the ring here. Turn it over to you to get your reaction to that.
I will quote my initial response, my social media's response about just how infuriating the whole situation is to hear it like that, whether it's a direct quote or whether Tim is paraphrasing some of what John Fisher said. And to be, this is not an interview about the Earthquakes, but the Earthquakes are an integral part of his businesses. And, if the Earthquakes are going to be a model for what Las Vegas can expect, and this is some of the attitude that you're hearing from John and indirectly from Dave Kaval, who sold a lot of folks on the promise of what the stadium could bring. And this stadium is a great place for a game. I like being here. It's loud when it's exciting when it's full. The national team games here are incredible. The All-Star game was just a tremendous amount of fun. When the Quakes put on a good show, it's a great place to watch a game. It's not the best place, but it's a great place to watch a game. The outdatedness part struck me as just, again, the kind of speak you do when you want to make excuses as opposed to want to take responsibility for the situation. Whether or not the Earthquakes have high revenue generating amenities is not the stadium's fault, and it's not the fans' fault. It's not the front office's fault who works with what they have. It's the ownership group and Dave Kaval who put this project through. Limitations with the city and planning, fine, whatever. But they are the ones that spearheaded this project, and to complain about that in any way whatsoever is hindering the organization. That's what's infuriating to me. The fans deserve better. They've got a great. This stadium is leaps and bounds above what the Earthquakes are used to playing in. And I love games at Buckshot. Believe me, they were fun. But I moved in when we moved into this park. When I, with my family, had our season tickets down here just under the press box and could cheer on this team. This was the new cathedral for soccer, and to call it outdated is a very simplistic attitude, which I think only serves the narrative about Oakland not being suitable for him either, and all of it just stinks to someone who's put a lot into supporting this organization, covering this organization, and that's, I think, what disappoints me the most.
So the first thing that I think when I see this quote and I read the article is that this is why Lou Wolf was the guy who was public facing, was the guy who was talking to the press, was the guy who was leading the initial stadium charge. This is why he was the public facing person, and John Fisher doesn't talk to the press, because the most generous reading of this that you can do is that it is a completely inept statement to make, because you're giving corporate partners, you're giving the Earthquakes front office, the Earthquakes players, the entire Earthquakes community, the idea that this stadium is outdated and that it's second rate and that it's not worth investing in. I mean, if I were PayPal executives, having just spent, millions of dollars to get the naming rights to this stadium, and hearing that the owner thinks that it's outdated and doesn't compare to LAFC Austin and St. Louis, I'd be like, why did I just spend that money? I've been sold by a snake oil salesman. I'm going to up and out and get my money to St. Louis or LAFC or one of the first rate stadiums. I think that it sabotages, it undermines all of the hard work that many committed people in the front office and organization have put into this stadium, and put in not only to getting it built, but to getting the sponsorship sold, because that is not easy, guys. It's one thing to sell soccer sponsorships in Europe. It is another thing to do it when you're the San Jose Earthquakes, and they have worked so hard over the last decade to get these sponsorships and to get revenue up. And one, flippant, ignorant, irresponsible comment by John Fisher, I think, has the capacity to undermine a lot of that. And I would not be surprised if, Jared Shawley, the president, and some other of the corporate executives had to be doing a lot of, running back and forth this week to kind of mitigate the fallout of that comment. So that's the generous reading, is that it's inept. And I think that the less generous reading that I'm probably more inclined to is that, it's actively trying to misdirect and to, actively, in some sense, gaslight the Earthquakes community about the trajectory of this organization and this team, because the fact that PayPal Park doesn't have as much premium seating as LAFC is not the reason why this Earthquakes team has not been competitive. And to even suggest that is crazy, and is just a big bag of stink is what that is. Because first of all, it makes people believe that this Earthquakes organization or this stadium deal is economically infeasible and economically poor. That is absolutely not the case. John Fisher has made boatloads of cash from this, PayPal Park stadium deal. When he bought this stadium land, he bought it at a reduced rate, significantly lower than the asking price from the city. He bought this land with a pretty much a sweetheart deal. And what he's done since then is that he's built this stadium. He always planned for it to be austere. He never actually really seemed to care that much about the stadium. It seemed to be, and all of the reporting has suggested, that it was Earthquakes executives and other people involved who were pushing to get a better and better stadium. His focus clearly seemed to be the surrounding real estate in the Coleman High Line, which, I can walk out that door and look at. There's now, Roku headquarters, there's a hotel, there's more buildings going up. That's his focus, and he has made bank on those properties. In 2020, he sold just 2 of those properties for $275 million. So to give the impression that this is not an economically, viable model for him, that he is not making cash hand over fist from this, is just, I think, like a really, really kind of morally disturbing thing for me. And if John Fisher were willing to invest any of that $275 million back into the Quakes, just a small fraction of it, this team could be the highest spending team in the league, and you'd never be talking about why they're not competitive. And so that's the meatier criticism here, I think, is that it feels like misdirecting about why the team has not been succeeding.
Yes, and again, I know the league has grown in many ways, and we have teams that take advantage of mechanisms to stock rosters within a salary cap league. I think I was mentioning to you, anyone who claims that the baseline for MLS should be fielding a competitive team, it should every team is competitive in a league based on parity and based on the salary cap. Unless you just have an inept front office, a technical staff that doesn't know what they're doing, you're going to have a competitive team. To hear it sort of phrased as this is not going to be a championship team does take a lot of wind out of the sails. When Dave Cavill was, in charge of this project, he was the public face of this project. And I was at the dinner, the Soccer Silicon Valley dinner back in 2009 when Lou Wolf originally, shared the renderings of what the stadium would look like. It doesn't look a whole lot different, although there have been, quite a few, amenities added. Dave Cavill was responsible for a lot of that push and making it happen. But he also would talk glowingly about San Jose finding its path and not having to be the Galaxy at the time, which had pushed the Quakes out of their last meaningful playoff run in 2012. That the Quakes were going to do it their way and they were going to be successful, and this stadium was going to be a part of that equation to be successful. And so to turn around and Dave Cavill had no comment. He just wanted to change the subject and talk about Vegas. I know that's his priority. He's not part of the Earthquakes anymore. But to not even acknowledge his role in creating a situation where fans and supporters would look at the new stadium as a harbinger of good, not as a kind of a shackle, an outdated stadium like John Fisher may have inadvertently said, but sometimes you say the quiet part out loud and you got to take responsibility when you do it. Again, I was infuriated with that as someone who's been a long time observer and participant in this whole process. And again, I leave myself at this stage much more disappointed that the hard work that a lot of folks are trying to do is potentially, like you say, undermined in the capacity that an owner in a pretty bad light right now, trying to put a positive spin on, at least on what's going on in Oakland, just basically crap the bed for his San Jose franchise in terms of the public eye, and a lot of people noticed.
And I think that the response from Fisher, from the team would probably be that, look, Fisher is actually spending money on the team. They're maxed out in all of their salary cap roster mechanisms. Sure, they could go out and invest, millions of dollars in DPs, but that's not even a successful model for winning. That hasn't proven to be a successful model for winning in Major League Soccer. And look, Fisher's building the new training complex as well. And Fisher is investing in the back end. And I hear that, and I want to give credit for a lot of those investments. I think they've probably started to pick up a little bit of pace over the last few years, but I still think there is just a general austerity here, a politics of austerity. That was true when they built the stadium and they decided to go with the strategy from the outset was to build a bare bones stadium and then add on top of that. That's true when they're building their roster. That's true when they're building their front office. That's true when they're prioritizing what's getting built out here. There's a reason that the new training field is not right here, and that there is a bunch of instead corporate real estate here, and they've spent 10 years having to get permissions for the Santa Clara fairgrounds. It's because it's not really been the priority. He is fundamentally a penny pincher, and that I think that the little cost savings here and there over the course of the years add up, and that's the reason why this team is not like a Nashville, is not like an LAFC. It's because they're scaling back in every way possible. They're not willing to invest 100% in the front office and the technical staff and the scouting staff and the analytics staff, in the players, and all of that adds up. And that's why you see the Earthquakes over the course of a decade making the playoffs twice. And I'm 100% willing to grant the fact that, yes, now they're investing in analytics, this piece here. Now they're making progress on the fairgrounds, but it's so selective that they're not even keeping up with the rate of growth in the rest of the league.
And that is again part of my disappointment. They do spend money in places that are often not visible, for years, and they still have a pretty robust, medical and fitness training program here where they can keep players fit. the best way to have a player play is to make sure he's healthy enough to play. And that's something the Earthquakes have invested a lot of time and effort to having a really good program on that side of things. But here's my challenge, and this is directly to John Fisher, because you are the one who writes the checks for this organization. I want you to put your money where your mouth is. If you truly believe in this organization, if it's truly a case that the revenues or the revenue generating opportunities are not as strong as they need to be, then do something about that. If it means working here in PayPal Park and making the investments to generate more of that income, if it means getting more big name sponsors and finding ways to get them more included in the club, then do so. It doesn't mean hoping you're going to sign the next best DP on a meager transfer fee, but it does mean showing us that you actually have the will to make the investment in a way that's going to bring back or increase the revenues and make this a championship quality team.
And from everything we've heard, there are no plans for Fisher to move this Earthquakes organization again. And I think it would be difficult given the Columbus Crew situation and the pre-court situation. But with that being the case, then why is the investment not being made? If this team is rooted in San Jose, and it's here to stay, then you need to make those investments.
A lot of so here's another thing that got me infuriated about that comment. A lot of times we know that ownerships of sports franchises will leverage communities to finance infrastructure projects that are just not good enough, or they need remodeling, they need re-improvement, and it takes all this money from the public to do so. And it's still the owner's decision as to whether they want to stay in that city, what they plan to do at that point. He brought this up. And so again, directly to John Fisher, you brought up that your stadium is outdated and that isn't up to the snuff of some of the higher quality stadiums in Major League Soccer. Well, do something about it directly. Don't ask the city to do it. Don't ask fans in the stands to pay more for their tickets. Don't try to find a way around it other than to do something to increase those revenue opportunities. And it doesn't have to just be the stadium. I've heard complaints about the marketing of this team. I've heard complaints about just you said it, sort of the small time feel that it often has. There are hardworking people in that front office who put many of them years of their lives into this organization. Jared Shawley is the president of this club and someone that I met years ago in a capacity, not president, but he's shown that he can get to and lead this organization from the top. But he's going to need that support in a way that goes beyond just hoping for the best, but rather it needs to be investment.
My heart hurts for the entire Earthquakes community after hearing those comments, because it's so demoralizing to hear that the owner talk so flippantly and disrespectfully about the ritual place where we all gather to watch soccer and experience as a community, just to dismiss it out of hand. I think hurts deeply. One of the people who I feel the worst for is Jared Shawley, the president, because it makes his job so much harder. It makes him have to go run around to all the corporate sponsors and to with a fire hydrant and put out all these fires that are coming up. Yeah. How can Jared Shawley succeed if John Fisher's not willing to make that investment? He's making it actively harder for his own front office to succeed. And we know the front office, these people care deeply about community. They care deeply about the success of this team, and they deserve an owner who's willing to back them and support them and give them the resources that they need to do good by this community and by this team and grow this club. And it's not about the corporate executives, because they are absolutely 100% going to do everything they can for this community. It's the fact that you have an owner who intentionally or not is undermining them in a really crucial point of their season.
Yeah, and again, I don't think well, I do feel a winning team can bring more fans to the stadium. Mm-hmm. What I worry a lot about is the core fans, throwing up their hands and giving up. The season ticket base eventually realizing that, okay, is it really worth it anymore? I'll go to a few games, but I don't know if I want to go to every game. And so if the organization, and again, if John Fisher can show the commitment to the organization, then he's going to not only have those hardcore fans, keep their allegiance, if you will. But as more fans grow to see that this club can be a winning team, that's how you can really grow the entire community around this team. It's not going to be waiting for the stadium to fill up to justify revenue spending. It's going to be doing everything you can to make sure that there's a product on the field that will fill this stadium.
And you know what my ask for John Fisher is that he come out and he publicly address this and he right this wrong, rather than having Jared Shawley and other executives have to go run and clean up the mess for him. It would all be solved if he came on the record, if he were willing to make a statement, if he were willing to say anything to indicate that he's invested in San Jose and that he cares about this community and that he recognizes the harm caused by this comment. It's really easy. This conversation could be over if John Fisher were willing to hop on the phone for 5 minutes and shut it down. And the fact that he's not is equally concerning to me, right? The fact that he's not willing to grant a 5-minute interview, to put out a statement, to host a press conference, to do anything about it, and instead making 10 other people, clean up the mess for him is also concerning. John Fisher needs to be the one. You need to be the one who is cleaning up this mess and is making a statement and showing commitment to this community and this team. And the fact that he's not done that is incredibly disappointing to me, because it could all be over if he were willing to take a more active role as an owner in this team and to take responsibility and to take ownership of this team.
Yeah, well, he set it up that the issue is the responsibility of the organization and the facilities that organization has, and so it's his responsibility to work through that problem.
And with that said, Robert, I want to give a shout out to everyone for sticking through us, and for all of the fans for your commitment, for sticking on for another 20 minutes to discuss this with me and Robert. Appreciate all the comments and energy that you're bringing in the chat. I want to shout out our Patreon, because if you want to contribute to the Earthquakes community, support the work that we do week in, week out, to follow this team, to call out John Fisher when he needs to be called out, and to really cover this organization, the way you can do that is by subscribing to the Patreon. $2 a month gets you access to all the articles from our Quakes Epicenter team. Robert, Jonas, Collinette, and I, are Asher Cohn, Jamin Moore. $5 a month gets you access to the patron Slack, which is the best thing that has happened to me in my 9 years covering the Earthquakes, to be able to hear all of this news as it happens and reaction to it as it happens in one space with 127 other people who care deeply about this team. That's the place to be. And we appreciate all of you for your support. And with that said, I want to throw it back around now to Robert Jonas one last time. We've covered a lot of ground tonight, Robert. What are you leaving tonight with, thinking about?
So I'm gonna end with something that I tweeted out last week after the game, and it relates to Alex, to you, to Jamin, to the entire Quakes Epicenter team. Doing these shows is one of the highlights of my time covering the San Jose Earthquakes. Being able to sit down and have such an engaged audience like we do, very knowledgeable about what's going on, very passionate about the success of this team, and you feed off of that. It's always been a really interesting team to report on. I've gotten to know a lot of folks that have both worked with the organization, moved on into different roles, but players along the years. There's a lot of love, there's a lot of care, and that goes into being part of a soccer club and being part of a soccer organization. And this kind of community that we have here at Quakes Epicenter is fantastic. So I just want to say thank you to the folks, especially those of you who've made it all the way to the end of the show tonight, for your dedication, because I'm dedicated to being here, to providing the best coverage that I can, and really appreciate everyone here who's our audience.
I appreciate that, Robert. And Robert has been here since 2008, since as long as this iteration of the Earthquakes franchise has been alive. So he's been here from the beginning. I want to give a shout out as well to Jamin Moore, who stuck around while Robert and I have been discussing for the last hour and a half. So we really appreciate Jamin for producing tonight's show. Jamin's a little bit under the weather tonight, so hoping that he feels better soon as well, and appreciate him for feeding us comments throughout the show. My final thoughts is that this is a turning point for the Earthquakes this season.
Yeah.
There's 3 games left. They can either limp into the playoffs, limp out of the playoffs, or they can take this opportunity and this lesson that they learned tonight to build momentum, to make bold choices, and to win. And I'm not going to be satisfied unless Luchi Gonzalez chooses that. And I hope that that message is heard loud and clear from the players, from the team, and from the whole organization, because I think that's the message that the fans want to be sending to this team at this stage in the season. What's happened over the last decade is in the past, and this is a new season, and the expectations are high, and they need to be pushing for more and holding themselves to higher standards this season. So that is where I will leave it tonight. We appreciate all of you for sticking around tonight, for bringing all your energy tonight. I feel like that maybe this Aftershock mirrored the game. Maybe it was quieter in the first half, and then we heated up in the second half. Maybe there's some narrative arc there.
I'm happy with the point
that we're following.
I'm happy with the point.
So with that said, we look forward to seeing all of y'all next weekend after the Minnesota game, and hopefully we'll have some better news to talk about then. Good night, y'all.